Welcome to the next installment of the Miami Group Sierra Club Virtual Backpack Series.
Brian led us through a great discussion on water, where to find it, how to treat it, how to carry it. And this week we're going to be taking a look at knot tying, specifically learning knots that are useful for backpacking. Note that this webinar is not intended to cover rock climbing knots and ropes. That's a whole different skill set. We will be doing a virtual practice session for each knot. So if you haven't already done so, grab a piece of rope, a cord, or it can even be a shoelace, or anything like that, excuse me, so that you'll be able to practice as Barry demonstrates these knots. But let's start off by introducing the team presenting this webinar. So all of your presenters are experienced campers, hikers, and backpackers. And additionally, we're also all instructors for the Miami Group Sierra Club backpacking school. My name is Nancy Ball, and I've been backpacking and leading trips since 2005 to places close to home and also all over the world. This year, I launched my new company. It's an adventure planning, adventure trip company, and the name of the company is Summit Trek and Travel. And next up is Barry. Barry, would you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Nancy. Did you advance the slide? Mine's still showing the title slide.
There we go.
Okay.
There it went.
Great.
I thought I did, but I guess I didn't look up.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Barry Randall, otherwise known as Aardvark, and I'm currently the Sierra Club Miami Group Outings Chair, which means I help lead a committee that plans and organizes various outings, including backpacking trips, hopefully again when the pandemic is over, and of all skill levels. And I've been doing this for a whole lot of years. And next up is Denise.
Hi, my name is Denise Tingle, otherwise known as Pippi Longstocking, and I have been camping, hiking, backpacking for 45 plus years. I am the hiking chair leader for the Miami Group Sierra Club, along with a backpacking school instructor. In addition, I lead cycling rides and backpacking trips, and my passion is backpacking, cycling, and I just love the outdoors. So welcome everyone, and all the new faces we have tonight. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Denise. Brian Wolfe is another of our instructors. He's not with us this evening, but we really appreciate him being part of the team as well. He's co-owner of Road Service and Trails, and he's a very experienced backpacker, and he is our go-to gear guy. He's a real gear expert. Also just want to give a shout out to Nicole Wolcott, who is our behind-the-scenes superstar. She's the volunteer coordinator for the Miami Group Sierra Club. And she works on member and volunteer recruitment, as well as doing things like teaching all of us how to use the Zoom platform and get the most out of it. So it's because of her we've been able to set this up. We truly appreciate her. Okay, so we're going to get this session started by giving you a poll. So Denise, if you would launch poll number 1. You have one question here: why is knowing how to tie knots important? And you can see we have great way to impress your friends. A good knot does its job. Knot tying looks good on your resume. Proper knot is simple, therefore quicker to tie. A well-tied knot is easier to untie. And oops, I thought this was a class in auto repair. So please tick all the statements on there that you think are true. Or that I should say are true for you. And Denise, if you'll let me know when we get close to
So far, we only have 2 of the 14, so
okay.
Everyone, please vote.
But I like the fact that the first one in there voted for everything. That's...
Yeah. Cool.
Again, we don't see your answers individually, so don't be shy on joining the poll.
And we don't grade them either.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Another 10 seconds, then we'll close it out?
Yep. We're about 85%, so.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to go ahead and end the polling.
Okay.
And share the results.
And Denise, if you could read them out to me.
Yeah.
I can't see them on my screen.
That's right. So
yeah.
We have a great way to impress my friends and parties is 50%. And the winner is a good knot does its job. Hold slips or slips when you want. 92%. Knot tying looks good on my resume. 25%, the proper knot is simple, therefore quicker to be tie, 58%. And then a well-tied knot is easier to untie with wet rope and cold hands, 67%, and 8%. Oops, I thought this was a class in auto repair.
Yeah, we had somebody. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll get some muffler work in here later in the evening or something. Yeah.
Well, I like that everybody plays along, and I really want to meet the people who say great way to impress my friends at parties. That sounds like some fun-loving people there. So there's not just one right answer, as you've probably guessed, but we're gonna kind of dig into this a little bit and discuss some of those things that were listed as potential answers. So take a look at these two pictures. So we often see the rat's nest knot tying technique, which is kind of what you see on the right-hand side there. So as was suggested in the poll, a well-tied knot is simple, and that makes it easy and quicker to tie, but equally important, it makes it quick and easy to untie as well. So think about being camping on a cold, damp, early morning and you're breaking camp. Which of these knots would you want to mess with to untie on a cold morning with cold hands? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I'm going to assume most of us would pick the one on the right. So that's right there, a perfect illustration of why learning how to tie good knots appropriate to the task is going to be real helpful in backpacking. So a good knot will hold, will do the job that's needed, and will easily come untied when you're ready. If you learn a few basic backpacking knots and know them well, you're going to be well served. We're only going to teach you a few basic knots, but you should practice them until you can literally tie them with your eyes closed. Everybody has their own favorite knots, and these happen to be ours. Actually, I'm going to say these happen to be Barry's. Not all of them are my favorite knots because there's a couple of them I haven't mastered yet. But once you have mastered these, it's easy to find a dozen more useful knots to learn. So there are a lot of different kind of rope for a lot of different purposes. There are natural materials like jute, hemp, thistle, linen, manila, cotton, and synthetics like nylon, polyester, and polypropylene. But for backpacking, 99% of the time you're going to be dealing with paracord. The paracord was originally parachute cord, but has since been found to be useful for a whole lot of other things. So it has a lot of uses. Originally a nylon kern mantle rope, which means a rope having a core and an outer sheath. There were several classes of paracords, and each class supported a different weight. So you might have heard of one common class referred to as Paracord 550, which can support 550 pounds of weight. So these days, paracord has become a generic term for any strong, thin, lightweight synthetic rope. And while this is what you'll most likely be dealing with while backpacking, we're going to be using a heavier rope to demonstrate the knots just so that it's easier to see for purposes of demonstration. So different parts of the rope, this will be helpful in following along as Barry is demonstrating how to tie some of these knots. First of all, a bight, B-I-G-H-T, that's just a bend in the rope. And if you look at the three illustrations at the bottom on the right half of the screen, the bight is the illustration on the left. It's just a simple bend in the rope. A loop is where the rope crosses over itself. And to the right of the bight, you see an overhand loop where the rope is crossing over itself above it, over it on top, and an underhand loop where is the next one on to the right of the overhand. So the loop is crossing under itself. The working end is the section of the rope that you have available to work with. So it's usually the short end that's actually in your hand. And the standing end is the section of rope that is not available to work with. So it might already be tied to a tree or going up over a tree limb or up on a cliff, and is not available for tying. So with that, I'm ready to turn it over to Barry and let him get started with the actual explanation of these knots, and he's going to show you how to do them.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. So we're going to start off with a square knot, which is a classic knot that basically is used to connect two pieces of equal size rope. So it's basically how to take two short ropes and make them into a longer rope. Very useful backpacking if you need a longer bear hang, or you need a longer guy rope on your tent, or you're tying up a tarp and you need a longer rope. So it's just a way to tie two equal size ropes together. So now I am gonna, if you want to go to the next slide, Nancy, and stop sharing. Just a reminder that you should now in the upper right hand corner of your screen see an option to go into speaker view. If it says speaker view, you want to click on it. If it says gallery view, you're already in speaker view, but it just will make it a little bit easier to follow along here. So we're going to do a square knot. So you've got basically two working ends of the rope. And first I'm going to take the right hand rope over and under the one to the left. And then I'm going to take the left, do it over and under the one to the right. And you end up with that nice symmetric looking figure like that. Okay.
Hey, Barry,
So,
I'm just going to add a quick comment for folks. You'll notice that the image is reversed. So what looks like Barry's left hand to us, I believe, is actually his right hand.
okay. It looks actually the right way to me, but if it's reversed to you.
Which one is your right hand?
It's my right hand.
One on the right.
So for us, that's for me at least, it's my left hand.
Interesting.
Your left hand. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well.
So listen, do what he says, not what you see.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's not the way it looks on mine.
Yeah,
but,
it looks like the right to me.
Yeah. Okay.
This is really going to complicate things for me. I just want you to know that.
Yeah. So let's go through that again. It's actually will work the same way, left over right, but right over left and under, left over right and under. And that's the kind of mnemonic to remember this knot. Right over left and under, left over right and under. And you get that nice symmetric looking thing. If you do it wrong, you get what's actually called a granny knot. So let's do it wrong. Let's do it right over left and then do right over left again. Okay. And you end up with kind of that funky looking thing with the ends kind of poking off in different directions. It actually has a name. That's a granny knot. So one more time. Right over left. Left over right. Square knot. Okay. And just one final thing. This can be a tough knot to untie, because when it tightens up, it really tightens up. But the easy way to untie it is to grab two sides like this, pull sideways, and it just kind of pops open. Okay. All right. Nancy, you want to get back to sharing? Okay. So the next knot that we're going to go through is a clove hitch. So this is one of a couple of choices that you have if you want to tie off the end of a rope. And most commonly that's going to happen if maybe you're putting up a clothesline or you're doing a bear hang, and this is the line that you're tying off to a tree after you've raised up the food. Or those are probably the most common, but basically you're tying off a rope to some tree or something like that. Okay, and it works best on a round tree or a round object. It doesn't work as well on a square post, simply because the way this knot works is the more tension you put on the line, it tightens up against the round structure. And if it's square, it just doesn't tighten up as well. So if you want to go to the next slide and then stop sharing, we'll show you a clove hitch. Okay, so this one I'm going to start by just laying the rope over the limb here. I'm going to bring it around over in an X. Okay, and then I'm going to bring it up and through and under the X. So it has that nice symmetric feel, and this would be the standing end, and this would be taking the tension, and that'll tighten up. So this would be going up to the tree with the bear hang. So let's try that again. Okay. Lay it over. Bring it around and form an X. Bring it up in front and go under the X and tighten it up. Okay. One more time. Lay it over. Lay it on top to form the X. Bring it up and go under. It's a clove hitch. Okay. Again, very useful knot to tie something off to a tree, and that is actually a very strong knot and will hold a lot of weight. Okay. So there's one other way you can tie. If you happen to have an open-ended post, so let's say you have a tree stump or something like that, you can tie a clove hitch like this. First, you make an overhand loop. You make a second overhand loop. I basically just have two overhand loops there. I take the second one and put it under the first one, and I can drop that over the post, and I have a clove hitch. Let me show you that one more time. One overhand loop, a second overhand loop, put the second one behind the first one, drop it over the post, and you have a clove hitch. Can you see that okay, Nancy?
I can see it okay, Barry.
Okay, good. All right. So that's a clove hitch. All right, what do we got next? Okay, so now we're going to do two half hitches. Two half hitches is actually another way to tie off a rope to a tree. So this, you could use this in the same way you'd use a clove hitch, for example, to tie off a bear hang. I really like using this actually to, if I'm ever attaching my paracord to a tarp, like through a grommet of a tarp, or attaching it to a tent. So, you know, the tie out spots on a tent. This is my go-to knot for that. So this one is a slip knot. It will tighten up. It's supposed to tighten up. So for example, if you're using it on a tarp and you're putting it through a grommet, it'll tighten right up to that tarp. And again, it won't slip. So you can also use this in conjunction with the clove hitch to kind of tie off a clove hitch and make it super secure. And I'll show you that too, because if you use that with a bear hang, then your bear hang will not come down, I guarantee it. So if you want to go to the next slide and stop sharing, we'll walk you through two half hitches. Okay, I'm going to start by laying the rope over the limb. Okay, I'm going to make one half hitch by laying the rope over the working end, over the standing end, and then bringing it through the loop closest to the limb. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing closer to me, in other words, farther away from the limb. So I'm going to do another half hitch by laying it over and pulling it through. Okay. Two half hitches. Okay. Show that again. Start by laying it over. Bring the working end up and over the standing. Bring it through that loop on the side closest to the limb. And then move closer to me and do the exact same thing again. Another half hitch coming around. And this will slip, so this one will slide all the way down. Okay. One more time. working end over the standing end, bring it through the loop, and then do the exact same thing, but closer to me, farther away from the limb. Bring it over, bring it through, and it slips down. Okay. And like I said, you can either use this standalone, or let's say we have a clove hitch. If you remember the clove hitch, we made our X, brought the line through. So if you want to make a clove hitch super secure, you can just tie 2 half hitches right now. So you do the clove hitch, 1 half hitch, 2nd half hitch, and that's not going anywhere. Okay. So it's just it's a nice way to finish off a clove hitch. Okay. So Nancy, I think now we were going to take a break and just see what people caught, what they missed.
Yeah, to unmute myself. Yes. So if we have, there's an opportunity for you to type questions that you might have about what you just saw in the chat box.
And if anybody wants me to repeat any of those, you know, if you want to see one again.
And so far, it looks like the chat box is pretty quiet.
Okay.
They must have all gotten them all. They're pros after watching.
Or they're just totally totally at sea.
I don't know. I think you explained it pretty well, Barry. Oh, Nancy says, no, I did not. Where does the name Clove Hitch come from?
Oh my God. Of course we get a question I can't answer. I have no idea. I honestly have no idea because it certainly doesn't look like a clove. So
We'll
I
have
don't know.
to Google that.
Somebody Google that and put it in the chat for us. Yep. 2 half hitches I can explain because it literally is 2 half hitches. So
That's good. So Nancy says, no, I did not. I think she's saying, no, she did not get them all. I think that was in response to that comment. I think that's
Okay.
what that was.
Well, if we could narrow it down. But
okay.
Anyway, we'll have other opportunities here to ask questions, or again, I can repeat any of them.
Yeah. So should we go ahead then, Barry?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Taut line hitch. This is actually one of my favorite knots. It's a pretty sad state of affairs when you have a favorite knot, isn't it? It's almost like people who impress their friends with knots at parties, right?
Yeah.
But this one is particularly useful because it's a sliding knot, but under tension, it stops sliding. So this is perfect for tying out the guy rope of a tent. It's perfect for tying a tarp to a tree. And those backpacking are principally the 2 times that I use this, but it's such a versatile knot for that. And it's almost impossible to do those things more effectively with any other knot. So for example, hanging a tent, I told you that I would use 2 half hitches to tie the rope to the grommet on the tarp. This is what I would use at the other end of the tarp to tie it, say, to a tree, because that way you can tighten it up and it won't slip. Likewise, if you're doing a clothesline, for example, you could do 2 half hitches or a clove hitch or something on one end, and then do the taut line at the other end, tighten it up, and you've now got a fairly rigid clothesline. So let's see, I guess if you want to go to the next one and stop sharing, we'll take a shot at this. Let me switch over. Actually, let me try to get a little closer here. All right. So a taut line hitch starts out just like 2 half hitches. So you're going to put the rope, in this case, over the limb. I'm going to bring the working end up and over the standing end and around and through just like I was doing 2 half hitches, okay? The difference is I'm now going to repeat that loop on the inside, in other words, closest to the tree. So I'm going to make one more loop on the inside, and then I'm going to come back out and kind of finish off the way I would have done the 2 half hitches with another half hitch on the outside. So you end up with a knot that you can tell you tied it right if the 2 ends are kind of coming out opposite sides of the knot when you're done, okay? And this is the nice thing about this knot is that if you put tension on it, this loop doesn't slip. So I'm actually pulling on this fairly hard, and this knot's not going anywhere. And yet I can take the tension off and I can adjust this loop to whatever I want, and I put the tension back on and it doesn't slip. So super knot for, again, tying out a guy line on a tent to a stake, tying a tarp to a tree. So let's go through it one more time. Start out just like 2 half hitches. Working end comes over the standing end. Bring it through the loop closest to the tree. I'm just going to repeat that, do another loop around closest to the tree, and then finish off just like I would have the 2 half hitches with a half hitch closest to me. Pull that tight and taut line hitch. Okay. One more time. Just like I'm starting 2 half hitches, I'm going to create a half hitch. I'm going to repeat that loop on the inside and then do one more half hitch on the outside closest to me. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully people got that. We'll stop in a few minutes for some more questions, but you want to jump into the next one? Okay. So this is a bowline, another extremely useful and versatile knot. This is when you want to create a loop that won't slip. So you want a loop and you want it to stay a loop. This is my go-to knot for the end of a bear hang, where I'm actually clipping the food bags on. So I make a bowline, and then it's very easy for multiple people actually to clip their bear hang bag onto this loop. Since the loop doesn't tighten up, it doesn't tighten up around all those bear bags, so it doesn't become this big kind of knotty mess when you go to take it down. It stays a loop. It's also considered a rescue knot because it won't slip, and therefore it's appropriate to put around a person's body, because you don't want a slip knot going around somebody's body because you're going to squish them, right? So it's also a rescue knot. The smaller picture here is a bowline and a bite, which is basically just a 2-loop bowline, also used as a rescue knot. But I don't find this one particularly useful in backpacking, although I'm sure there's some scenario that it probably is. So if you want to go to the next slide and drop back in, we'll show you how it's done. Okay. So this is my, let's put my standing end up there. So this would be the end going up the tree or up the cliff, whatever's going on. So that's the standing end. And I'm going to start by making an overhand loop. And then I'm going to take the working end that I want to create the static loop in, and I'm going to bring it up from underneath and through this hole. Now the mnemonic for this one is that you've got a hole and you've created a tree and you have a rabbit coming out of the hole. Okay, so the rabbit comes out of the hole, kind of looks around, goes around the tree, gets scared for whatever reason, ducks back into the hole, and that's a bowline. Okay, and that knot, this loop will not slip. Okay, so let's try that again. Standing ends off there. First thing I'm going to do is make an overhand loop. So I'm creating my tree and my hole. It is important that the tree come up from under the hole. You notice that this is an overhand loop. This loop is on top. Okay. My rabbit comes out of the hole, looks around, runs around the tree, ducks back into the hole, pull it down tight, and I've got a bowline. Okay. One more time. Make the loop a little bit smaller this time. So first I make my overhand loop. Rabbit comes out of the hole, around the tree, back into the hole, tighten it up, and this loop will stay a loop. So if, for example, I got a bear bag here and I want to hang it on the loop, I can just clip mine has a little carabiner on it, so I can just clip that on there. The loop will not tighten, so it doesn't get all squished up in there. I can add other people's bear bags on here. So again, that's one of my most common reasons why I use the Bowline backpacking. Okay. Now the other thing that actually is, if you're geeky enough, a fun party trick is that you can tie a bowline with one hand. So the scenario that people use to illustrate this is, suppose you fall off a cliff and you land on a ledge and you fall on your arm and you've now got a disabled arm and someone up on top of that cliff throws you a rope. Oh my God, you have to tie a bowline around yourself with one arm. How are you going to do that? I hasten to add, I've never had to do that, so it really is just kind of a interesting, I don't know, philosophical or just thing to know. But let's say that did happen to you. So let's say this is my standing end. So this is the rope that they threw down to me. I'm going to put this one around my waist. It's a little hard to do and still stay in the field of view of the camera. So I'm going to hold this one out with my arm, but pretend that's just going up the cliff there. So I'm going to start by holding the working end in my hand, kind of laid out like that with my fingers fairly straight. I'm going to lay that over the standing end, and then I'm going to twist my wrist. And magically what I've got is the hole, the tree, and the rabbit coming out of it, just by laying my hand over the rope and twisting it. Now I can use my fingers just to work the rabbit back into the hole, and voila, we've got a bowline. Okay.
Nice.
So let's try that one more time. So you start off kind of in your palm, fingers up, lay it over, twist your wrist, and now you've got the rabbit coming out of the hole. Flip it around. Got to kind of work your fingers out of there, and voila, you've got a bowline tied with one hand. So now you have something to impress people at parties with. Okay, enough of that. What's next?
Let's see.
How are we doing on time, Nancy?
8:09. You're doing great.
Okay, doing okay then. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the sheet bend. So this is a very useful knot for tying two ropes of unequal size. So I don't find as many opportunities backpacking to use this one, but every once in a while I do find that I want to tie my paracord to some larger rope. Sometimes it's a piece of rope that's already in the campsite, for example. It's, you know, somebody else's bear hang that is still in the tree, or some piece of rope that's attached to a tree that I want to use as for a hammock, or I want to use for a tarp or something. So somebody's got this bigger rope and I want to tie my paracord to it. So this is the knot you use whenever you have two ropes of unequal size. So you want to flip to the next slide and show you how that one's done. Okay. So we're going to put our standing end of the rope over there. This is the working end. So the first thing you do is you create a loop with the larger of the two ropes. You take your smaller rope. So this is actually paracord. This is probably what you're going to mostly be using when you're out backpacking. So you're going to come up behind the loop. So through the loop from behind, wrap the smaller cord around the back of the loop. Now, if I took the smaller cord and just fed it back through, I'd actually have a square knot, right? That would be a square knot. But what I want to do instead is pass the smaller cord under itself on top of the larger one, like that. Okay, and the reason this works better is because if you can see it, the smaller cord is kind of locking itself onto the larger cord. Since it crosses over itself, when you put it under tension, it's kind of locking itself on. If you try this with a square knot, I'll keep this fairly loose so it'll illustrate it well, but let's say we tied that as a square knot instead and just brought it back through. Get my fat fingers to work here. So if I have that as a square knot and I pull on this shorter or the smaller rope, it has a tendency to slide through the big one. And I kept it loose to kind of illustrate that, but even when it's tightened up, you have that same general effect. The smaller rope will tend to slide through the bigger one. Okay, so how do you tie that again? Gonna make a loop with the bigger rope. Gonna come up from behind with the smaller one, wrap it around the back of the loop, and then bring it under itself in front and tighten it down. Okay, one more time. A loop with the larger. Bring the smaller one up from behind. Wrap it behind the larger loop. Under itself, tighten it up. Okay, that's a sheep pen. All right. I think that might have been the last of our knots, right? Oh, we got a few variations, yeah. So, you know, Nancy said earlier, you know, these are just a few of the knots that I find most useful. You go out there and just Google backpacking knots, and you'll find everyone and their brother has their favorite 10 knots, essential 5 knots, whatever, and they're all slightly different, which is kind of interesting. But these knots, I find, if you know the ones that we just went through here, you can pretty much handle any situation in a normal backpacking experience. You know, we haven't covered things like trucker's hitch and, you know, timberline hitches and just, you know, there's a million knots, but these will get you through most things. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of variations. Most of these knots, and most knots in general, can be tied in 2 additional slight variations. The first is a quick release. So it's just a way to tie the knot where if you just pull on one end, the knot unravels. It's just an easy way to untie a knot. And it doesn't really hurt the holding ability of the knot, which is nice. And the second variation on this is to tie this all the same knots that we did, but do them doubled over. And if you think about that, the reason that sometimes that's useful is sometimes your working end of your rope is just way too long. So let's say you just hung your bear hang and you've pulled the food up into the air, and now you want to tie off to a tree, but you've got like 30 feet of rope. And if you think about tying a clove hitch around that tree, it means you're going to wrap it around and pull that 30 feet of rope all the way through, wrap it around again, pull that 30 feet of rope all the way through again, okay, which is just a pain, right? It's going to get all knotted up and it's going to catch on twigs and you're just going to get frustrated with it. So instead of that, you can just double up that rope at the length that you need. So let's say you only need 10 feet. Just double it up, tie the knot with the doubled up rope. You're going to have 20 feet of excess rope there that you can just kind of roll up and tuck away somewhere. But the knot will hold and the knot will be sound and you won't be nearly as frustrated trying to pull 30 feet of rope through a half hitch. So let's show you a couple of examples of that. Okay, so let's tie a taut line hitch quick release. So first I'm going to tie my taut line hitch. So I'm going to put the rope over, do a half hitch, do a second half hitch on the inside of that loop. Now normally to finish this off, I would just bring it through like that and I would have a taut line hitch. Instead of that, I'm just going to bring a loop through and tighten it, okay? I didn't finish it, right? I didn't pull this end all the way through. I left it as a loop. It's still just as strong. I can still pull on this and this is not going to slide. But now when it comes down time to take this down, I just pull on that and it comes undone. And this just will kind of unravel itself and fall down. So if I'm, say, tying a tarp up in a tall tree, 10 feet over my head, I'll tie it this way. So in the morning, all I have to do is reach up, grab that loose end, pull on it, and the whole thing just comes down. I don't have to sit there and try and actually fiddle with a knot 10 feet over my head, okay? Let's try that with a clove hitch. So I can tie a clove hitch, I'll do my X. If I were to finish this normally, I would take that through, right? Make a quick release. I pull it through, but I leave it as a loop, okay? It's still just as strong, but now when I want to go and untie it, I just pull that loop and it's untied, okay? So you can do that with most knots. The second thing we talked about was doubling up the rope. So let's say you've got like 30 feet of excess cord here, and I really don't want to have to mess with it, pulling it through the knot. I can just double the rope up at the appropriate length. So this is what I need to tie off to the tree here, even though I've got 30 feet of excess rope working end out here. And I'll just use that to tie my knot. So let's say I'm doing a clove hitch. It'll be the exact same knot. It's just got two pieces of rope through it. So let's say this is the end that's actually holding something, and this is the end that's got 30 feet of excess rope. It's just, I'll just, roll this up, tuck it away somewhere, and now I've got a nice, neat knot, and I don't have to worry about unraveling that 30 feet of excess rope. You can do it with pretty much any knot. So let's say you got that same situation and you want to tie two half hitches. You just double it up. First half hitch, second half hitch. So it looks identical, it just is double, okay? Alrighty. I think that covered that. What do we got next?
Let's see. Think something fun. Yes.
Another poll. You want to launch this one, Denise?
Yep. Okay, I'm trying to find pole number 2.
Not there?
I
don't
don't,
know.
I don't see it.
Huh.
Let's try again.
Could have sworn it was there. Let me see.
Not
It was,
that.
it was there at one point.
Let me try again. I see.
Relaunch pull in. Yeah.
Pole number.
Oh, there it is.
There.
You want me to start it? I see it.
Yeah, I got it now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
What's the best knot to tie a loop around a person? So go ahead, we have a sheet bend if you have 2 unequal size ropes, 2 half hitches so you can cinch it down tight and they won't fall out. A taut line hitch so you can adjust the size of the loop, or a bowline on a bite so that the loop doesn't tighten. And then it depends, are they a friend? Well, it looks like everybody got about 71.
Good job.
A few more, we're at 100%. Oops, we got 18%.
Yeah.
Line. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling.
Yep. That one actually did have a correct answer, and it's the bowline.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we had 92% was
good.
and
Good
one
job.
person said the top line.
Good job.
Nobody picked it depends on whether or not they're a friend. I think
just
I'm relieved by that.
We're all kind people, I guess. That's all.
Okay. So we've got one more bonus here. Bonus knot.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can figure this one out. Yeah. So this is sometimes called the hiker's knot, although we just all call it Nancy's knot because Nancy is the one who taught us all how to tie this. A lot of variations out there on this. If you go out and actually Google how to lace up your hiking boots or how to tie your hiking boots, you'll find an inordinate number of videos out there teaching you a whole bunch of different knots, and actually we won't cover it here, but a lot of interesting lacing techniques too. For we covered a little bit in our footwear session webinar. But as far as the knot itself, this is one that just won't come untied. So if you ever did a normal bow and you're out hiking and you had that frustration of having your bootlace coming untied all the time, then this is one of the great alternatives out there. So if you want to stop sharing, I will attempt to show this. Okay. I'm going to try and put my foot up here and hopefully people can see that. Okay, so I'm going to untie this. So we're going to actually start out with what's called a surgeon's knot. So you're actually going to learn 2 knots here, but this is called a surgeon's knot, and it's basically just a overhand knot that you do twice. So that's a normal overhand knot. I'm just going to come back through twice. This is called a surgeon's knot. I'm going to tighten that up. And actually, regardless how you tie your boots, starting it with a surgeon's knot is generally a good idea just because it holds better while you're finishing the knot. I'm going to start just like I was making a traditional bow. Okay, so I'm going to make a rabbit ear. I'm going to loop around. I'm going to come through. The only difference is I'm keeping this opening open here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that second rabbit ear and I'm going to pull it back down through again. And that's the only difference, is that I pulled that down through twice. And now if I tighten that up, you can see it's got a kind of a double loop there. That will not come untied all by itself, but it unties just as easily as a normal bow. So let's try that again. Okay, I'm going to start out with the surgeon's knot. Once, twice, Tighten it up. Start as if we're making just a normal bow. Around and through. Just keeping this open here. Loop that ear back around and towards me again. And then tighten it up. I don't know. Did I do that right, Nancy?
It looks right to me.
Do
So
the,
just
the
to give
Nancy
credit,
knot?
just to give credit where credit is due, I don't think we should call it the Nancy knot, because those of you who know Bill Creasy, who was the head naturalist at the Cincinnati Nature Center, is the one who taught that to me. So we should call it Bill's knot.
Okay, we can do that.
Just
We can
to
do
be
that.
fair.
Yeah. While I've actually got my foot up here in this awkward position that I'll probably never get down from, you can use that surgeon's knot at other places in your boot here, and it actually will help your foot from sliding. So if you find, for example, that your foot's sliding forward in the boot for whatever reason, if you put a surgeon knot lower, like across here on the boot, that'll actually help the boot fit your foot better. So just a little added item. Again, we cover that more in footwear. Okay.
All right.
Hopefully people got that one. What's next?
I think we're ready to turn things over to Denise to close us out here.
I did see that somebody put in the chat the definition of clove hitch. That's kind of cool.
Oh, I missed that. Well,
yeah. I'm not sure I understand it. It's the past tense of cleave because the rope appears to separate parallel lines at the back of the knot. Well, thank you. Thank you, Allison, for sharing that.
Okay, so how did we do? I'm going to go ahead and bring up poll number 3. Okay. So this concludes the presentation, but hang around for a few more minutes. How did we do? We hope you found a few new skills that you can use as you enjoy future backpacking trips. We have one more poll for you that will help us know how we did. Please tell us how many new things you heard today or learned, and how many surprises or new ideas you got from the presentation. So again, if you could go ahead and do that poll. And while you're completing this last poll, I'll mention again that we will post a PDF copy of this presentation on the Sierra Club website. We are placing a link in the chat box to the page on the Sierra Club website now. You'll also find a schedule of future webinars posted there. Within 3 business days, we'll also post a link there to a recording of this webinar. As we said at the beginning of this presentation, you'll find a whole host of other things on the Sierra Club site as well. Things like a schedule of our innings meetings, which are a series of educational meetings, our newsletters, ways that you can take action, and more. If you're interested in knowing more about the Outings Committee, you can also check out our recorded presentation from last year that describes our function and activities. We would love to have you join us. We'll have a live Q&A at the end of this presentation. You also have the opportunity to voice your questions during this time. We'll unmute you. While you are thinking about your questions, I want to let you know that we plan to host several more webinars on a variety of topics such as trip planning, navigation, map reading. If there's a particular topic you'd be interested in, please use the chat box to let us know that as well. So this presentation, let me go ahead and end the polling. This presentation has been brought to you by Roads, Rivers, and Trails, our local independently owned outdoor outfitter in Milford, Ohio, by the Miami Group Sierra Club, a part of the country's largest grassroots environment movement, and by Summit Trek and Travel, your connection for adventure travel. As we just mentioned, the link in the chat box will take you to a site with a schedule of future webinars. We can also email Nancy at summittrekandtravel@yahoo.com if you'd like to be added to the mailing list. If you love the outdoors as much as we do, we would love to have you join us exploring, enjoying, and protecting the planet. Some easy ways to do this are become a Sierra Club member, make a donation, join our meetup, become a volunteer, and the links are there on the slide. We will place a link in the chat box to the page with a PDF copy of this presentation. You can download that to access these links. And lastly, if you are already an experienced outdoors person with skills to share, we would love to have you join us on the Outings Committee. We are looking for outings leaders who have a passion for sharing their experience with others. Right now, we are doing this virtually through our webinar series, but someday we'll be back out on the trails and waterways and bike trails in person again. The Outings Committee has a lot of fun. Consider joining us. You will see the link above to become an outings leader. We will begin our live Q&A in just a moment, but for those who have to log off now, it's been great to be here with you, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
All right. Thanks, Denise. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and probably you all want to put your view back into galley view so we can see each other. And I'm going to also see if I can make this so that you can all unmute yourself.
Looks like they have that ability.
They already can. Okay. Yeah. Well, that was easy.
Yeah.
And you can also use the current chat box, or if you have a question you'd like to ask our panel live, please just raise your hand so that we know it's to unmute you if we haven't already.
And I am also just about now going to put the link into the chat box for the PDF of this. Here we go. The PDF of this presentation, because for sure when you go to practice these knots at home so that you can do them with your eyes closed, you're going to want to start off by looking at the illustrations that Barry shared with you earlier. You'll also be able, at that same link, be able to access a recording after a couple of days of this webinar. So I think it's in there. There we go. Okay. So do we have any questions before we let Barry get away?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few in the chat box. I think one that we didn't answer was Becky asked, is the Taut hitch the same as a hangman's noose?
No, actually. No, the taut line hitch and the hangman's noose are separate. I can actually show you how to tie a hangman's noose. Feels politically incorrect at this time. Yeah. But no, it's not. A hangman's noose actually, it does slide. It just slides. It doesn't actually hold the way a taut line hitch holds. And you tie more hitches. So typically you have 8 to 10 hitches in a hangman's noose. But yeah, someday if you want to know, I can show you how to tie one.
And then Renee said she's been using taut line hitches and 2/2 hitches and didn't know their names.
Yeah. And now you know, and you can impress your friends. And
I still want to know who said they wanted to learn these for party tricks. I just think that feels like a fun person. It was Marty. All right.
There you go. Yeah.
Cool.
I want to go to his party.
So, oh my goodness, Becky needs to know that knot for her next husband. I think we're going downhill fast here.
Yeah.
Why does she need to know it?
For her next husband.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think she's talking about the hangman's noose.
Okay. All right. Well.
Okay.
Nancy says, I once knew these knots. I learned I need to practice. Yeah, learning these knots, you can do them like Barry just did in the description, but like he said, you have to really practice, and definitely practice before you go backpacking. Otherwise, you'll be asking all of us, which is fine with us too.
Which is fine. Yep.
And then Renee said, learn to on the Hudson River sloop Clearwater and Girl Scouts, or maybe that. So yeah. And Abby said, thank you for the presentation. Very enjoyable and easy.
Yeah, you did a good job, Barry.
Well, good. Thank you.
You did a really good job explaining. So.
Yeah, hope people get a chance to practice, because believe me, when you're cold and tired and it's dark and you're trying to do this, it really does help if you've done it quite a few times. So.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Next week, next week is a fun topic. Denise and I will be presenting one that's slightly inappropriate, it's Oh Shit, Part 1. It's going to be about two things, hiker safety and how you do what bears do in the woods. So it'll be interesting and promise to make it fun. So hope we'll see some of you there next Thursday.
Another good party topic, right?
Another good party topic. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It seems like it always ends up that way on backpacking trips anyway.
Yep.
Discussion. So,
So thanks for joining us, everybody, and hope to see you on the next one.
Have a good night.
night.
Bye-bye.